In the vibrant yet gritty city of Boston, Robert McCall leads a life defined by routine and simplicity. His days begin with precision, rising early to meticulously prepare himself for another ordinary shift at the hardware store. The store, a hub of tools, lumber, and life's everyday necessities, is where Robert maintains his unassuming persona. To his colleagues, Robert is the epitome of reliability. A kind-hearted, soft-spoken man who shows up on time, lends a helping hand, and never fails to put others' needs above his own. Despite their friendly banter and light-hearted teasing, no one really knows much about Robert's past. And that's exactly how he prefers it. Yet, there's something about Robert that sets him apart, something ineffable that others may not immediately notice but can sense. It's in his posture, the deliberate way he moves, and the way he scans his surroundings, as if cataloging every detail. To the casual observer, he seems like a man at peace, content in his simplicity. But behind his calm exterior lies a man with a past so heavy it threatens to seep into his quiet present. Robert's solitude is not just a lifestyle choice, it's a protective measure, a boundary he's created between himself and the chaos of the world he's left behind. At night, when the rest of the city slows down, Robert's routine takes on a different rhythm. He frequents a small, nondescript diner that feels like a sanctuary. Here, the fluorescent glow and the clinking of cups offer a peculiar solace. Robert's table is always the same, near the window, giving him a view of the streets, a vantage point to observe the ebb and flow of life outside. He brings along a carefully chosen book, diving into classics like The Old Man and the Sea or Moby Dick. The books he reads are not just stories. They're reflections of his inner world, tales of struggle, resilience, and redemption. It is in this diner that Robert meets Terry, a young woman whose presence adds a new dynamic to his evenings. Terry, with her youthful spirit and guarded demeanor, is an aspiring singer trapped in a grim reality. Her path is dictated by her handler, Slavi, a ruthless pimp tied to the Russian mafia don. Terry's life, filled with coercion and fear, is a stark contrast to her dreams of performing on a grand stage. Despite her circumstances, she exudes a certain charm, a flicker of hope that has not yet been extinguished. Robert observes her with quiet curiosity, his keen eyes noticing the bruises she tries to hide and the heaviness in her voice. Their interactions start out casual, brief exchanges about music, books, or the weather. But these small conversations gradually evolve into a bond built on mutual understanding. Terry senses something different in Robert, a kindness and patience she's unaccustomed to in her world. Robert, in turn, sees a part of himself in her, a soul weighed down by circumstances, but not yet broken. He listens intently as she talks about her favorite songs, her childhood memories, and her dreams of a life far away from the streets. Each conversation deepens their connection, though Robert remains careful not to pry too much. Despite his guarded nature, Robert cannot ignore the injustice surrounding Terry's situation. The more he learns about her struggles, the more it stirs something deep within him, a moral obligation to act. Robert's sense of justice, long dormant, begins to resurface. Yet, he grapples with the implications of stepping in. To intervene would mean unraveling the careful life he's constructed, risking exposure of the man he once was. It's a delicate balance, one he's maintained for years, but Terry's plight threatens to tip the scales. The first real turning point comes one evening when Terry arrives at the diner later than usual. Her usual light-hearted banter is replaced by an unsettling silence. Her face bears fresh bruises, her lips split and swollen, and her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resignation. She tries to downplay the incident, brushing it off as nothing out of the ordinary, but her pain is evident. Robert's heart tightens as he listens. He feels anger rising within him, a quiet fury at the cruelty inflicted upon this young woman who has already endured so much. That night, Robert sits in the diner long after Terry has left, staring at his book but not reading a single word. His mind races as he replays her words, her face, and the raw vulnerability she revealed. It is in this moment that Robert begins to question his commitment to staying in the shadows. His moral compass, which he has tried to suppress for so long, points him in only one direction: to do what is right. However, Robert doesn't act impulsively. He knows the dangers of confronting men like Chloë and the mafia he works for. These are not petty criminals. They are part of a vast network capable of unimaginable violence. But for Robert, the question is no longer about danger or self-preservation. It's about principle, about standing up for someone who cannot stand up for themselves. The dormant warrior within him awakens, and for the first time in years, Robert feels a sense of purpose. In these early scenes, the audience begins to see the layers of Robert McCall's character. He is not just a man seeking redemption. He is a protector, a force of justice, and a symbol of resilience. The quiet moments at the diner, his careful interactions with Terry, and his internal struggle to reconcile his past with his present lay the foundation for the explosive journey that lies ahead. These moments are not just about setting the stage for action. They are about exploring the humanity of a man who has seen the worst of the world and still chooses to fight for what is right. As the night turns into dawn, Robert makes a decision that will change everything. Not just for him, but for Terry and the countless others whose lives intersect with his own. The stage is set for a story that is as much about redemption as it is about justice, a tale of one man's fight to bring light to the darkest corners of the world. Robert McCall's decision to act is not one he takes lightly. For years, he has lived a life of solitude, carefully constructed to distance himself from his violent past. He has buried that part of himself deep, replacing it with a routine of simplicity and quiet anonymity. But something about Terry's situation ignites a fire within him, a moral imperative he can no longer ignore. The careful balance of his life is shattered, and he knows that stepping into her world will mean revisiting a side of himself he hoped to leave behind forever. The night Robert chooses to intervene is quiet, the city alive with its usual rhythms. Streetlights flicker, cars hum along distant highways, and the occasional murmur of late-night pedestrians drifts through the air. But within the walls of Slavy's headquarters, a very different world exists. A world where power is wielded with cruelty, and lives are reduced to commodities. Robert arrives unarmed, carrying nothing but his calm demeanor and a steely resolve. Slavy and his men are in the middle of their usual dealings when Robert walks in. The room, dimly lit and filled with smoke, is a stark contrast to the serene spaces Robert inhabits. The men barely notice him at first, assuming he is no more than a lost wanderer or a desperate customer. But Robert's presence soon commands attention. He is calm but deliberate, his every step measured. When he speaks, his voice is steady, carrying an authority that cuts through the noise of the room. Robert's request is simple: Tara's freedom. He explains calmly that he is willing to compensate them for her release, offering a sum of money that far exceeds her value to them. The proposition is met with laughter and scorn. Slavy, amused by Robert's audacity, mocks him openly. To the gang, Robert is an anomaly, a man with no apparent power or influence who dares to challenge them. They underestimate him, mistaking his calm demeanor for weakness. But Robert is no stranger to confrontation. He observes every detail of the room: the positioning of the men, the placement of weapons, the exits. His mind works like a machine, analyzing probabilities and outcomes with precision. When Slavy dismisses his offer and escalates the situation with threats, Robert remains unflinching. His patience, while immense, has its limits, and the line has been crossed. In a sudden, controlled burst of action, Robert reveals the depth of his capabilities. The men, though armed and outnumbering him, are no match for his skill and precision. Every movement he makes is deliberate and calculated, his combat techniques honed to perfection. The fight is brutal and efficient, each second a testament to Robert's unparalleled training. The audience is left breathless, witnessing not just violence, but a mastery of control and strategy that transforms the scene into a deadly ballet. When the dust settles, Slavi and his men are left incapacitated, their arrogance replaced with fear. Robert stands amidst the wreckage, unscathed but not unshaken. He knows the consequences of his actions, the ripple effect they will have on the world he has re-entered. By taking this step, he has not only rescued Terry, but also sent a message to those who prey on the vulnerable. Afterward, Robert visits Terry, who is recovering in the hospital after a particularly brutal encounter with Slava's men. Her surprise at seeing him is evident. She had not expected anyone, let alone Robert, to intervene on her behalf. The bruises on her face and the weariness in her eyes speak volumes about the life she has endured. Robert's presence, however, brings a glimmer of hope. For the first time, Terry feels that someone sees her as more than a victim, as someone worth fighting for. Their conversation is brief but poignant. Robert does not seek gratitude or recognition. His actions stem from a deeper sense of duty. Terry, despite her circumstances, expresses a quiet strength that Robert admires. She talks about her dreams of singing, of leaving the life she's trapped in behind. Robert listens intently, his quiet encouragement offering her a sense of possibility she had long forgotten. However, Robert knows that freeing Terry is only the beginning. The men he confronted are not the top of the chain. They are merely a cog in a much larger machine, a machine fueled by greed, corruption, and exploitation. The Russian Mafia, a powerful and ruthless organization, will not take the loss of one of their operations lightly. Robert's actions have set off a chain of events that will bring the full weight of their wrath upon him. Despite the looming threat, Robert does not waver. His resolve is rooted in a profound belief in justice and the value of human life. He begins to dig deeper, uncovering the extent of the Mafia's operations and their influence in the city. His methods are methodical and relentless, a blend of research, observation, and calculated risks. He tracks their activities, identifying key players and vulnerabilities in their network. The deeper Robert delves, the more he realizes the scale of the corruption. The Mafia's reach extends beyond criminal enterprises, infiltrating legitimate businesses, law enforcement, and political circles. It is a web of power designed to shield them from consequences, a system that thrives on fear and manipulation. But Robert is undeterred. For him, this is not just about Terry. It is about confronting the very forces that perpetuate suffering and injustice. As he continues his mission, Robert's character is further revealed. He is not driven by vengeance or personal gain, but by a profound sense of responsibility. His actions are guided by a moral code that values integrity and compassion. Yet there is a darkness within him, a capacity for violence that he wields with precision but does not relish. It is a duality that makes him both a fearsome adversary and a deeply empathetic human being. The scenes that follow showcase Robert's strategic brilliance and resourcefulness. He dismantles the Mafia's operations piece by piece, targeting their financial assets, supply chains, and key personnel. Each move is calculated to maximize impact while minimizing collateral damage. Robert's actions send shockwaves through the organization, destabilizing their grip on power and exposing their vulnerabilities. Amidst the chaos, Robert maintains his unassuming facade. He continues to work at the hardware store, interact with his colleagues, and visit the diner. But beneath the surface, he is a man on a mission, balancing the duality of his existence with remarkable composure. His interactions with Terry become less frequent, but the bond they share remains a driving force behind his actions. As the Mafia begins to realize the extent of the threat they face, their response becomes increasingly aggressive. They deploy their most ruthless enforcers, men trained to eliminate any obstacle in their path. But Robert, with his unmatched skills and unwavering resolve, proves to be more than a match for them. The battles that ensue are intense and visceral, a testament to Robert's resilience and resourcefulness. Through it all, Robert's humanity shines through. He is not invincible. He feels pain, loss, and doubt. But it is his ability to rise above these challenges, to remain steadfast in his pursuit of justice that defines him. His journey is not just about defeating the mafia, but about reclaiming his own sense of purpose and redemption. By the end of this chapter, Robert has not only changed the lives of those he has helped, but has also begun to transform himself. The man who once lived in quiet obscurity is now a force of nature, a symbol of hope and resistance against oppression. His actions, though fraught with danger, reaffirm the power of courage and compassion in the face of adversity. The aftermath of Robert McCall's initial intervention is like the calm before a storm. Slavy and his gang's brutal defeat at Robert's hands sends ripples through the criminal underworld, marking the beginning of a much larger conflict. For the first time in years, Robert is thrust back into the kind of life he had left behind. The decision to help Terry was born from his moral compass, but the consequences of that single action spiral far beyond his expectations. In the days that follow, Robert observes the impact of his actions from the shadows. The once dominant Russian gang that controlled the area with fear and violence now moves with caution and paranoia. Whispers about the mysterious man who took down Slavy and his crew spread quickly. Yet, despite their fear, the gang's superiors within the Russian mafia hierarchy are enraged. For them, the incident isn't just a loss of business, it's a challenge to their authority. Robert, however, does not let the weight of the impending danger deter him. In fact, he takes a proactive stance, understanding that his intervention was not a one-time event, but a commitment to righting a series of wrongs. He spends his days continuing his quiet, unassuming routine, working at the hardware store, engaging in small talk with his colleagues, and maintaining his visits to the diner. But his nights are a different story entirely. With a keen sense of strategy and unparalleled skill, Robert begins gathering information about the Russian mafia data. He knows that if they've sent someone after him, they'll likely make mistakes, expose cracks in their operations. Using techniques honed over decades, Robert monitors their movements, listens to conversations, and studies the players in their organization. He becomes an invisible observer, slipping through the city unnoticed, yet leaving no detail unexamined. One night, while walking home from the diner, Robert notices a black SUV idling a little too long across the street. Inside, he catches a glimpse of two men sitting silently, their eyes trained on him. It's subtle, but Robert recognizes surveillance when he sees it. Instead of reacting immediately, he continues on his path, his pace steady and his expression neutral. But his mind is already planning. When Robert reaches his apartment, he doesn't enter right away. Instead, he circles the block, taking advantage of the city's labyrinthine streets to lose the tail. Once he's certain he's no longer being followed, he slips into his building through a side entrance. Inside, he prepares himself for the inevitable confrontation. Robert's home, though sparse and unassuming, contains the tools of his past life, items he had hoped he would never need again. He retrieves a small unmarked case from a hidden compartment, opening it to reveal a set of highly specialized equipment. The following night, Robert takes the offensive. He traces the black SUV to a secluded garage on the outskirts of the city. The two men from before are inside, speaking in hushed tones as they review surveillance footage. Robert watches from the shadows, analyzing their movements and gathering as much information as possible. He waits for the opportune moment to strike. When the moment comes, it's swift and decisive. Robert disables the SUV and confronts the men with a calm yet commanding presence. They attempt to resist, but their efforts are no match for Robert's precision. Within moments he has them subdued, their fear palpable as they realize they're dealing with someone far more dangerous than they anticipated. Robert doesn't kill them. Instead, he uses the encounter as an opportunity to send a message. He leaves the men tied up with a single note addressed to their superiors: "Stay out of my way." The note is short, but its implications are clear. Robert has no intention of backing down, and he's willing to take the fight directly to those who threaten him or the innocent. The incident escalates the situation dramatically. Word of Robert's actions reaches Vladimir Pushkin, the shadowy figure at the helm of the Russian mafia's operations. Pushkin is a man of immense power and influence, whose reach extends far beyond the city. To him, Robert is not just an obstacle, but a direct threat to the empire he has built. Pushkin dispatches his most trusted enforcer, Teddy, to handle the situation. Teddy is a stark contrast to the brash gangsters Robert has dealt with so far. He is calculating, methodical, and utterly ruthless, a man who thrives on control and manipulation. When Teddy arrives in the city, he wastes no time in asserting his authority. He interrogates Slavi's surviving associates, using fear and violence to extract information about the man who disrupted their operations. Meanwhile, Robert continues his mission. He begins targeting the mafia's infrastructure, dismantling their operations piece by piece. His methods are precise, designed to cause maximum disruption with minimal collateral damage. From shutting down illegal shipments to exposing corrupt officials on their payroll, Robert's actions strike at the heart of the organization. But Teddy is not easily deterred. He begins to piece together a profile of Robert, using every resource at his disposal to learn about the man who has become their nemesis. Through surveillance, informants, and forensic analysis, Teddy uncovers fragments of Robert's past, a career in the shadows, marked by missions that never officially existed. The tension between Robert and Teddy builds steadily, culminating in a series of cat-and-mouse encounters. Each confrontation reveals more about their respective characters, Robert's unwavering sense of justice and Teddy's cold, unrelenting pursuit of power. Their battle is as much psychological as it is physical, a clash of ideologies that underscores the stakes of their conflict. In one particularly gripping sequence, Teddy attempts to ambush Robert at his apartment, believing he has finally cornered him. But Robert, always several steps ahead, anticipates the move. The ensuing confrontation is a masterclass in strategy and improvisation, with Robert using his intimate knowledge of the space to outmaneuver Teddy and his men. The encounter leaves Teddy shaken but even more determined to eliminate Robert. As the conflict escalates, Robert's actions begin to inspire others. Terry, now recovering and starting to rebuild her life, learns about the mysterious vigilante who took down Slavi's gang. Though she doesn't know the full extent of Robert's involvement, she senses that he has become a force for change in a world that desperately needs it. Through these events, Robert's transformation becomes evident. The man who once sought only peace and anonymity has embraced a new purpose, using his skills to protect those who cannot protect themselves. But this transformation comes at a cost. Each step he takes deeper into the fight against the mafia brings him closer to the life he left behind, a life filled with violence, danger, and moral ambiguity. By the end of this chapter, Robert has not only solidified his position as a formidable adversary to the Russian mafia, but has also set the stage for an inevitable showdown. The stakes are higher than ever, with both sides fully aware that their conflict can only end in one of two ways: surrender or destruction. Robert, true to his nature, refuses to back down, prepared to face whatever challenges lie ahead. The arrival of Teddy intensifies the stakes, transforming what had been a localized conflict into a full-scale battle of wits and strategy. Teddy, an enforcer of the highest caliber, is unlike any adversary Robert McCall has encountered since leaving his shadowy past behind. Cold, calculating, and relentless, Teddy serves as the perfect embodiment of the ruthlessness of the Russian mafia. With his arrival, the mafia's response shifts from reactionary to meticulously planned, each move now guided by Teddy's unflinching resolve to neutralize the man who has disrupted their operations. Teddy's first move is to establish control over the remnants of Slavi's operation. He does so with a mixture of fear and precision, interrogating Slavi's surviving associates to piece together a profile of the mysterious figure who decimated their ranks. Teddy's interrogation methods are brutal yet effective, leveraging both psychological manipulation and physical intimidation to extract every ounce of information. Despite their reluctance, the men under Slavi, eventually paint a fragmented but alarming picture of Robert McCall, a man who moves like a ghost, strikes with deadly precision, and leaves no trace behind. Meanwhile, Robert observes these developments from the shadows, acutely aware that his actions have drawn the attention of someone far more dangerous than the local thugs he initially faced. Robert's instincts, honed over years of covert operations, alert him to the presence of this new adversary long before their paths physically cross. Teddy's arrival is marked by subtle shifts in the city's underworld dynamics, tighter security around key operations, increased surveillance, and a noticeable air of tension among the mafia's foot soldiers. To Robert, these signs confirm that the mafia is no longer underestimating him. Rather than retreating in the face of this escalating threat, Robert doubles down on his mission. He knows that allowing the mafia to regroup would not only endanger him, but also perpetuate the cycle of violence and exploitation that he has committed himself to dismantling. Armed with a clear sense of purpose and an unparalleled set of skills, Robert begins targeting the mafia's operations on a broader scale. Each strike is carefully planned and executed, designed to maximize damage while minimizing collateral harm. One night, Robert infiltrates a high-level meeting between the mafia's top lieutenants, held in a seemingly impenetrable warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Using his knowledge of surveillance blind spots and his mastery of stealth, Robert bypasses the building's extensive security measures and plants a series of explosive charges. As the meeting reaches its peak, the charges detonate in a controlled sequence, sending a clear message to the organization's leadership. Their power is not as absolute as they believe. The attack not only disrupts their plans, but also sows discord among their ranks, with each lieutenant now questioning the organization's ability to protect its own. Teddy, however, is not easily intimidated. He views the warehouse attack not as a setback, but as an opportunity to study his opponent. Analyzing the scene with forensic precision, Teddy begins to piece together Robert's methods, identifying patterns and clues that would elude a less experienced investigator. Through this process, Teddy gains a newfound respect for his adversary, recognizing Robert as a man of extraordinary capability and resolve. Yet this respect only fuels Teddy's determination to bring him down. As the conflict between Robert and Teddy escalates, their encounters take on the quality of a high-stakes chess match. Both men are masters of strategy, anticipating each other's moves and countering with precision. In one instance, Teddy sets a trap for Robert by leaking false information about a shipment of illegal arms, hoping to lure him into an ambush. Robert, however, sees through the ruse and turns the trap against Teddy's men, leaving a trail of chaos in his wake. Despite these victories, Robert is not immune to the toll of his actions. Each night spent dismantling the mafia's operations leaves him physically and emotionally drained, a stark reminder of the life he had tried to leave behind. The violence, while necessary to achieve his goals, weighs heavily on his conscience, forcing him to confront the moral complexities of his mission. For every life he saves, there is another life lost, whether it be a criminal who falls by his hand or an innocent caught in the crossfire. This duality becomes a recurring theme in Robert's journey, adding depth to his character and highlighting the sacrifices inherent in his pursuit of justice. Teddy, too, faces his own set of challenges. As Robert's attacks continue to undermine the mafia's operations, Teddy finds himself under increasing pressure from Vladimir Pushkin, the shadowy figure who controls the organization from afar. Pushkin's growing impatience is communicated through terse, threatening phone calls, each one serving as a reminder of the high stakes involved. For Teddy, failure is not an option. His reputation, his livelihood, and perhaps even his life depend on his ability to neutralize Robert McCall. The tension between the two adversaries reaches a boiling point when Teddy orchestrates a daring raid on Robert's apartment, believing he has finally cornered his elusive target. The raid is executed with military precision, involving a team of heavily armed operatives and a carefully coordinated plan. But when they breach the apartment, they find it empty, save for a single note left behind. "You're too late." The note is accompanied by a series of photographs documenting the mafia's operations, from illegal drug shipments to corrupt officials on their payroll. The message is clear. Robert is always one step ahead, and his fight is far from over. The raid, intended to assert Teddy's dominance, instead exposes his vulnerability, leaving him increasingly frustrated and desperate. Despite this setback, Teddy refuses to give up. He shifts his focus to those closest to Robert, believing that exploiting his connections might provide the leverage he needs. This strategy leads him to Susan Plummer, a former colleague of Robert's, who serves as one of his few remaining ties to his past life. Teddy's pursuit of Susan introduces a new layer of complexity to the narrative, as Robert is forced to protect not only himself, but also those he cares about. The conflict between Robert and Teddy is not merely a battle of physical strength and tactical skill, it is a clash of ideologies. Robert represents the ideal of justice tempered by compassion, a man who uses his abilities to protect the powerless and confront the corrupt. Teddy, in contrast, embodies the ruthless pragmatism of the criminal underworld, a man who values power and control above all else. Their interactions reveal the stark contrast between these two worldviews, creating a compelling dynamic that drives the story forward. As the stakes continue to rise, Robert's actions begin to inspire others. Terry, now recovering from her ordeal, finds herself emboldened by the mysterious vigilante who intervened on her behalf. Though she remains unaware of Robert's true identity, she begins to take steps toward reclaiming her life, seeking out opportunities to escape the cycle of exploitation that once defined her existence. Her transformation serves as a poignant reminder of the far-reaching impact of Robert's mission, highlighting the potential for redemption even in the darkest of circumstances. By the end of this chapter, Robert and Teddy are locked in a deadly stalemate, each man pushing the other to their limits. The stage is set for a final confrontation, one that will determine not only the fate of the Russian mafia, but also the trajectory of Robert's journey. As the tension builds, the narrative delves deeper into the complexities of their conflict, exploring themes of justice, morality, and the human capacity for change. The result is a gripping, emotionally resonant story that leaves audiences eagerly anticipating the next chapter in Robert McCall's journey. The intensity of Robert McCall's mission escalates further as he sets his sights on dismantling the heart of the Russian mafia's operations. This section portrays a pivotal moment in the narrative, where McCall begins targeting the organization's infrastructure and its key players with surgical precision. His actions are no longer just about retaliation for Tara's plight. They've grown into a full-scale crusade against an empire built on fear, exploitation, and corruption. With each strike, Robert's methods become more elaborate, a testament to his resourcefulness and adaptability. His next target is a high-security money laundering hub, a seemingly impenetrable fortress that serves as the lifeblood of the mafia's financial operations. Understanding the importance of this location to their empire, Robert meticulously plans his approach, studying the building's layout, guard schedules, and security systems. Every detail is scrutinized, as he knows that one misstep could cost him his life. Robert uses his connections to gather additional intelligence, leveraging the knowledge of people who have suffered under the mafia's oppressive regime. These individuals, inspired by Robert's defiance, provide him with crucial information, blueprints of the building, knowledge of backdoor entrances, and even details about the guards' routines. This collaborative effort highlights the growing ripple effect of Robert's actions, as his bravery begins to empower others to take a stand against their oppressors. On the night of the operation, Robert moves with the stealth of a shadow. Disguised as a janitor, he infiltrates the building without raising suspicion. The tension is palpable as he navigates the labyrinthine corridors, his every movement calculated to avoid detection. Robert's keen observational skills come into play here. He notes the placement of cameras, the habits of the guards, and even the ambient sounds of the building, all of which he uses to his advantage. Once inside the main vault room, Robert sets his plan into motion. Using a combination of MP devices and clever hacking, He disables the building's surveillance systems, plunging the security team into chaos. The sudden blackout causes confusion among the guards, who scramble to identify the source of the breach. In the midst of this disarray, Robert plants explosives in key locations, ensuring maximum damage to the mafia's financial operations. The explosion that follows is both devastating and symbolic, a loud declaration of Robert's intent to dismantle the mafia piece by piece. As the building crumbles, Robert slips away unnoticed, leaving behind a trail of destruction that reverberates through the organization. The attack sends shockwaves through the mafia's ranks, forcing them to confront the reality that their stronghold is not as invincible as they believed. For Robert, the destruction of the money laundering hub is a significant victory, but it is also a reminder of the high stakes involved in his mission. Each action he takes brings him closer to his ultimate goal, but it also increases the danger he faces. The mafia, now fully aware of the threat he poses, begins to intensify their efforts to track him down. Under Teddy's leadership, the organization deploys a team of highly trained operatives to hunt Robert, marking the beginning of a deadly game of cat and mouse. Teddy's pursuit of Robert is relentless and methodical. Using the remnants of the mafia's surveillance network, Teddy pieces together a profile of his elusive adversary. He examines the patterns of Robert's attacks, searching for clues that might reveal his identity or his next move. Teddy's analytical approach is a stark contrast to the brute force tactics of the mafia's lower-level enforcers, highlighting his role as a formidable antagonist. Despite the increasing pressure, Robert remains undeterred. He understands that his fight is not just against the mafia, but also against the system that allows such organizations to thrive. This realization motivates him to target not only the mafia's operations, but also the corrupt officials and businesses that enable their activities. In one particularly daring move, Robert exposes a network of corrupt police officers who have been colluding with the mafia, providing them with protection in exchange for bribes. This act of whistleblowing has far-reaching consequences, shaking the foundations of the city's law enforcement and drawing public attention to the deep-seated corruption within the system. For the first time, the media begins to cover the story, portraying Robert's actions as those of a vigilante hero, fighting against insurmountable odds. While Robert himself remains in the shadows, his actions inspire a wave of public outcry, putting additional pressure on the authorities to address the mafia's influence. The media's coverage of Robert's exploits also has an unintended consequence. It places Terry back in the spotlight. Although she has been trying to rebuild her life, the renewed attention forces her to confront the trauma of her past. She struggles with conflicting emotions, torn between gratitude for Robert's intervention and fear of the repercussions it might bring. Tara's journey during this section adds a layer of emotional depth to the narrative, highlighting the human cost of Robert's mission. As the mafia's operations continue to unravel, Robert finds himself facing increasingly dangerous adversaries. One of these encounters takes place in a clandestine nightclub known for hosting the city's elite criminals. Posing as a patron, Robert infiltrates the establishment, gathering information about the mafia's remaining strongholds. The tension in this scene is palpable, as Robert's presence in such a hostile environment underscores the high stakes of his mission. During his reconnaissance, Robert overhears a conversation between two high-ranking members of the mafia, revealing details about an upcoming shipment of illegal weapons. Recognizing the opportunity to strike another blow against the organization, Robert devises a plan to intercept the shipment. The subsequent sequence is a masterclass in tension and action, as Robert uses his combat skills and tactical ingenuity to disable the convoy and destroy the weapons. The destruction of the weapon shipment is a turning point in the narrative, marking the moment when the mafia begins to see Robert not just as a nuisance but as an existential threat. Teddy, enraged by the continued losses, becomes increasingly desperate to capture or kill Robert. This desperation leads him to employ more extreme measures, including threatening the lives of innocent civilians to lure Robert out of hiding. Robert, faced with the moral dilemma of protecting himself versus safeguarding the innocent, is forced to confront the darkest aspects of his mission. His decision to prioritize the lives of others, even at great personal risk, reaffirms his commitment to justice and his role as a protector of the vulnerable. This internal struggle adds complexity to his character, making him more relatable and human. As the section draws to a close, the stage is set for the final confrontation between Robert and Teddy. Both men are now fully aware of each other's capabilities, and their conflict has become deeply personal. For Robert, the fight is not just about defeating an enemy, it is about reclaiming his sense of purpose and making amends for the sins of his past. For Teddy, it is about proving his superiority and preserving his reputation within the criminal underworld. The build-up to this climactic encounter is marked by a series of smaller skirmishes, each one testing the limits of Robert's resolve and resourcefulness. These moments of tension and action serve to heighten the anticipation for the eventual showdown, keeping the audience on the edge of their seats. Through it all, Robert remains steadfast in his mission, driven by an unwavering belief in the possibility of redemption and the power of one person to make a difference. As Robert McCall delves deeper into his battle against the criminal empire, Section 6 captures a pivotal shift in his strategy, mentality, and the stakes of his crusade. By this point, McCall's series of calculated strikes against the organization has not only disrupted its operations, but also inflicted an unmistakable sense of vulnerability among its members. The intensity of his mission grows as he begins targeting more deeply embedded elements of the syndicate, all while navigating the moral weight of his actions and the personal risks involved. The section begins with Robert surveilling a crucial meeting of the syndicate, Upper Echelon. This gathering is not just any meeting but a council of the organization's most influential leaders, convened to discuss the escalating attacks that have left their empire reeling. Robert, always prepared and thorough, has tapped into surveillance channels, hacked security cameras, and even gained access to private documents to anticipate the meeting's location and purpose. From a hidden vantage point in an abandoned building across the street, Robert watches through binoculars, noting the tense body language of the participants as they scramble to formulate a response. This sequence underlines the escalating stakes, as Robert's actions have now drawn the attention of the organization's highest ranks. Yet, it also highlights his strategic genius. Rather than recklessly barging in, McCall takes the time to observe, analyze, and plan his next move meticulously. It's not just about violence for Robert. It's about dismantling the criminal empire piece by piece, using their own structures against them. At the heart of this gathering is a man named Ivan Borovsky, a cold and calculating lieutenant in the organization who has been tasked with quelling the chaos caused by McCall. Borovsky is ruthless, a stark contrast to the slightly methodical but detached Teddy. Unlike Teddy, Borovsky thrives on direct confrontation and has already begun implementing a counter-strike plan to flush Robert out of hiding. This shift introduces a new dynamic into the narrative, as Robert now faces an enemy who is not only intelligent but also aggressive and willing to use any means necessary to maintain control. As Robert monitors the meeting, he overhears key details about Borovsky's plan to strike back. This plan involves targeting individuals who Robert has indirectly helped, people like Terry, who now represents a symbol of defiance against the syndicate. The Mafia's goal is clear: to send a message not just to Robert, but to anyone who dares oppose them. For Robert, this revelation adds a deeply personal layer to his mission. His actions are no longer just about justice, they're about protecting those whose lives he has touched. Realizing the urgency of the situation, Robert decides to take preemptive action. He infiltrates a warehouse that serves as Borovsky's operational hub. This is no ordinary warehouse. It's a heavily fortified structure with multiple layers of security, from armed guards to sophisticated surveillance systems. Robert, however, is undeterred. His approach is calculated, exploiting the guards' routines and using distractions to slip inside unnoticed. Once inside, Robert discovers a treasure trove of information, ledgers detailing the organization's financial transactions, lists of corrupt officials on their payroll, and even a map highlighting safe houses and supply routes. This discovery is a turning point, as it provides Robert with the means to attack the organization not just physically, but also economically and politically. However, retrieving this information comes at a cost. As Robert gathers the documents, he triggers a silent alarm, alerting Borowski and his men to the breach. What follows is a tense, heart-pounding sequence as Robert navigates the labyrinthine warehouse, evading capture and neutralizing guards with his characteristic efficiency. The environment plays a significant role in this sequence, with Robert using everything from forklifts to heavy machinery as tools and weapons. This setting also showcases Robert's ingenuity, as he turns what initially seems like a disadvantage, the confined industrial space, into an advantage, using it to outmaneuver and outsmart his pursuers. During his escape, Robert confronts a moral dilemma. He encounters a young man working as a technician for the organization, a man clearly out of his depth and scared for his life. The technician begs for mercy, explaining that he was coerced into working for the mafia to pay off his family's debts. This moment is a microcosm of the larger theme of the film, the shades of gray in morality and the systemic forces that trap individuals in cycles of crime and exploitation. Robert, understanding the man's plight, spares him but delivers a stern warning to leave the organization and never look back. This act of mercy reinforces Robert's humanity, showing that, despite his lethal efficiency, he is not without compassion. Robert's escape from the warehouse culminates in a confrontation with Borowski's second-in-command, a brutal enforcer named Victor Tortiti. Victor is a physical powerhouse, a stark contrast to the more cerebral threats Robert has faced thus far. Their fight is brutal and unrelenting, a clash of raw strength versus precise skill. The choreography of this fight is intense, emphasizing Robert's tactical approach as he uses his surroundings and quick thinking to overcome Victor's sheer power. Ultimately, Robert emerges victorious, but not without sustaining injuries, a reminder of his mortality and the physical toll of his mission. With the documents in hand, Robert retreats to a safe location to analyze his findings. This sequence is quieter, providing a moment of introspection as Robert sifts through the evidence. The documents reveal the extent of the organization's corruption, from bribery of government officials to exploitation of vulnerable communities. This moment is pivotal, as it reinforces the enormity of the challenge Robert faces. Yet, it also strengthens his resolve, as he realizes that his mission is not just about dismantling a criminal empire, but about exposing a system that thrives on the suffering of others. The section concludes with Robert using the information he has gathered to strike another blow against the organization. He leaks the financial records to investigative journalists, sparking a media frenzy that puts public and legal pressure on the mafia's operations. This move is strategic, as it forces the organization to divert resources to damage control, weakening their ability to retaliate against Robert. At the same time, it demonstrates Robert's understanding of the power of information and his ability to fight not just with violence, but also with intelligence and strategy. This escalation in Robert's campaign sets the stage for the final act of the story, as the stakes continue to rise and the confrontation between Robert and his adversaries grows ever closer. Through his actions, Robert not only disrupts the organization, but also inspires hope in those who have suffered under its rule. His journey in this section is one of resilience, adaptability, and unwavering commitment to justice, underscoring the depth of his character and the complexity of the story. Begins with Robert McCall diving even deeper into the heart of the criminal empire, moving beyond its logistical operations and financial dealings to its more personal and psychological core. By this stage, McCall has disrupted the syndicate's flow of money, eliminated key operatives, and exposed corrupt officials tied to their network. These actions have created chaos within the organization, forcing its leaders to act desperately. The escalating tension builds a palpable sense of danger as McCall sets his sights on the remaining pillars holding the empire together. The section opens with Robert shadowing Borowski, who has taken over as the new head of operations after Teddy's downfall. Borowski is not only more ruthless but also far more paranoid and effective McCall's relentless attacks. Unlike before, the organization is no longer operating smoothly. Instead, it is riddled with mistrust, fear, and internal dissent. Borowski's attempts to re-establish control come at a significant cost, as his aggressive tactics alienate even some of his closest allies. McCall capitalizes on this divide, further destabilizing the syndicate by sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust among its members. One of McCall's strategies involves targeting the syndicate's communications network. Using his expertise in surveillance and technological manipulation, he intercepts sensitive messages and alters key details to mislead the organization. For instance, he sends fake orders to certain factions, leading them to believe that Borowski has betrayed them. This clever ploy results in violent infighting, weakening the group's cohesion. McCall watches these events unfold from a safe distance, his demeanor calm yet resolute, as he orchestrates the syndicate's self-destruction. However, McCall's actions are not without consequences. The organization, desperate to regain control, begins lashing out indiscriminately. Innocent people in the community are caught in the crossfire, as Borowski's men escalate their intimidation tactics to send a message. This development weighs heavily on McCall, who feels a deep sense of responsibility for the collateral damage caused by his mission. In one poignant scene, he visits a family who lost their business due to the syndicate's retaliation. Though he doesn't reveal his role in the conflict, his guilt is evident in his eyes as he quietly leaves a stack of cash on their doorstep, a small gesture to help them rebuild. As the syndicate crumbles from within, Borowski becomes increasingly desperate to eliminate McCall. He enlists the help of an elite mercenary team, led by a former military operative named Anton Reznikov. Reznikov is a cunning and highly skilled adversary, possessing a level of training and expertise that rivals McCall's. This introduces a new layer of tension, as McCall is no longer dealing with ordinary thugs, but with professionals who understand his methods and are capable of countering them. The first encounter between McCall and Reznikov's team is a masterclass in suspense and strategy. Set in an abandoned industrial complex, the scene is a tense game of cat and mouse as McCall uses his intimate knowledge of the terrain to outwit the mercenaries. He sets traps, manipulates the lighting, and creates distractions to disorient his pursuers. Despite his efforts, Reznikov proves to be a formidable opponent, anticipating McCall's moves and nearly cornering him at one point. The sequence highlights the stakes of the conflict, as McCall is pushed to his limits, both physically and mentally. During their confrontation, Reznikov taunts McCall, questioning the morality of his actions and accusing him of being no better than the criminals he fights. This exchange strikes a nerve with McCall, forcing him to confront the darker aspects of his mission. Has his quest for justice turned into a personal vendetta? Is he sacrificing his humanity in the process? These questions linger in the air as McCall narrowly escapes, leaving behind a trail of destruction that serves as a warning to Reznikov and his team. Meanwhile, McCall's interactions with the community continue to provide a stark contrast to the violence of his mission. He takes time to help those in need, whether it's mentoring a young boy who dreams of becoming an artist or assisting an elderly woman who fears eviction from her home. These moments of quiet compassion reveal the depth of McCall's character, showing that, despite his capacity for violence, he is fundamentally driven by a desire to make the world a better place. These scenes also serve as a reminder of what's at stake: the lives and dreams of ordinary people who deserve a chance to live free from fear and oppression. As the section progresses, McCall turns his attention to dismantling the syndicate's human trafficking operations. This is a particularly harrowing part of his mission, as he uncovers the extent of the organization's exploitation and abuse. Using the information he gathered from the warehouse, McCall targets a shipping hub where victims are being held before being transported to other locations. The operation is heavily guarded, with multiple layers of security designed to deter even the most determined intruders. McCall's approach to the rescue is both meticulous and deeply personal. He takes the time to learn the names and stories of the victims, treating them as individuals rather than just numbers. This human touch adds emotional weight to the sequence, as McCall's determination to save them becomes not just a tactical objective, but a moral imperative. The rescue itself is a breathtaking combination of stealth, strategy, and sheer willpower, as McCall overcomes overwhelming odds to free the captives and deliver them to safety. The aftermath of the rescue is bittersweet. While McCall succeeds in liberating the victims, he is haunted by the knowledge that he cannot undo the trauma they have endured. In one particularly poignant moment, a young girl who was among the captives asks McCall why he risked his life to save them. His response is simple yet profound: "Because someone has to." This line encapsulates the essence of McCall's character, a man who refuses to stand by while others suffer, no matter the cost to himself. The section ends with Borowski realizing that his grip on the organization is slipping beyond repair. His desperation is palpable as he orders an all-out assault on McCall, vowing to eliminate the man who has single-handedly dismantled his empire. Meanwhile, McCall prepares for the final confrontation, knowing that the stakes have never been higher. The stage is set for an explosive climax, as two opposing forces, one driven by greed and power, the other by justice and compassion, prepare to collide in a battle that will determine the fate of everyone involved. Sees Robert McCall facing a critical turning point in his mission. The events leading up to this moment have not only shaken the criminal syndicate, but also left McCall increasingly isolated, as his relentless pursuit of justice forces him to operate in the shadows with little support. This section delves deeply into McCall's preparation for his next move, as well as the personal stakes involved, painting a vivid picture of a man who balances on the edge of heroism and self-destruction. The story begins with McCall meticulously planning his next steps against the syndicate, aware that Borowski's organization is crumbling but still dangerous. With Borowski's paranoia pushing him to take desperate measures, McCall knows the final stages of his mission will require even greater precision and resolve. He spends hours in his hidden base, poring over blueprints, surveillance footage, and intelligence gathered from his previous operations. Every movement, every strike, and every possible countermeasure is accounted for in his strategy. McCall's dedication to detail is almost obsessive, underscoring the gravity of his mission and the personal toll it takes on him. At the same time, McCall grapples with the psychological weight of his actions. His success in dismantling the syndicate has come at a high cost, not just to himself but to the innocent lives caught in the crossfire. There's a poignant moment when McCall reflects on the faces of the people he's saved and the ones he couldn't. These memories haunt him, a constant reminder of the imperfect nature of his crusade. Despite the overwhelming odds and the emotional burden, McCall resolves to see his mission through to the end. In this section, we also see McCall leveraging his connections within the community to gather intelligence. He approaches those who have benefited from his actions, people he has helped and who now trust him implicitly. These individuals, from a street vendor who overhears conversations to a former gang member seeking redemption, provide McCall with crucial insights into the syndicate's activities. Their willingness to aid McCall highlights the ripple effect of his actions, as ordinary citizens find courage and agency in the face of adversity. Meanwhile, Borowski, the syndicate's embattled leader, takes drastic steps to regain control. His once loyal followers are now questioning his authority, and whispers of rebellion spread throughout the ranks. To reassert dominance, Borowski organizes a public display of power, targeting those he suspects of betraying him. This act of brutality is not only a warning to his enemies, but also an attempt to bait McCall into revealing himself. Borowski knows that McCall's moral compass will not allow him to stand by while innocent lives are threatened. McCall, however, is not easily provoked. He recognizes Borowski's tactics and carefully weighs his options. Rather than rushing into a trap, he uses the opportunity to gather more information about Borowski's operations and the people he trusts. This calculated patience is a testament to McCall's experience and discipline, as he understands that impulsive action could jeopardize everything he has worked for. As McCall closes in on Borowski, the narrative shifts to explore the relationship between the two men. Though they are on opposite sides of the conflict, they share certain parallels. Both are intelligent, resourceful, and unwavering in their pursuits. Yet, where McCall's motivations are rooted in justice and compassion, Borowski's are driven by greed and a lust for power. This contrast serves to highlight the moral complexities of the story, as McCall's methods sometimes blur the line between hero and vigilante d'autoritario. In one particularly intense sequence, McCall infiltrates a high-security compound where Borowski is believed to be hiding. The scene is a masterclass in tension and suspense, as McCall navigates a labyrinth of guards, traps, and surveillance systems. His movements are deliberate and precise, every step calculated to avoid detection. The quiet moments of anticipation are punctuated by bursts of action, as McCall disables security measures and neutralizes threats with ruthless efficiency. During the infiltration, McCall uncovers shocking evidence of the syndicate's reach and influence. Documents, financial records, and hidden caches of weapons reveal the extent of their operations. This discovery not only adds urgency to McCall's mission, but also raises the stakes as he realizes that the fight against the syndicate is far from over. As McCall continues his pursuit, he encounters a young woman who has been coerced into working for the syndicate. Her story is one of exploitation and fear, but beneath her vulnerability lies a spark of resilience. McCall sees in her a reflection of the people he's fighting for, the innocent lives trapped in a web of corruption and violence. He reassures her that she is not alone and promises to protect her, even as he knows the risks involved. This interaction humanizes McCall, showing that his mission is not just about taking down criminals, but about restoring hope to those who have been forgotten. The section culminates in a dramatic confrontation between McCall and Reznikov, the mercenary hired by Borowski to eliminate him. Their encounter is a clash of skill and strategy, as Reznikov uses his military training to counter McCall's tactics. The fight is brutal and unrelenting, with both men pushing themselves to the limit. In the end, McCall's resourcefulness and determination give him the upper hand. But the victory is bittersweet. Reznikov's dying words serve as a stark reminder of the cost of McCall's mission, as he warns that the path of vengeance leads only to more suffering. The section ends with McCall standing amidst the wreckage of the compound, bloodied but unbroken. He takes a moment to process the events, knowing that the fight is far from over. Borowski may have lost a key ally, but he is still a formidable adversary, and McCall's journey is far from complete. The stage is set for the next chapter, as McCall prepares for the final showdown with Borowski and his remaining forces. Section 9 of the story marks a pivotal moment where McCall's relentless pursuit of justice reaches a critical juncture. The tides begin to shift, revealing the intricate layers of Borowski's criminal empire, and McCall finds himself embroiled in a battle that tests not only his skills, but also his resolve. This section captures the escalating stakes, both on a personal and tactical level, as McCall inches closer to dismantling the syndicate while contending with his own vulnerabilities. As McCall continues his mission, his reputation has become a double-edged sword. On one hand, his calculated dismantling of Borowski's operations has instilled fear within the ranks of the syndicate. Many of Borowski's associates, once loyal to a fault, are now hesitant and paranoid, fearing McCall's next move. On the other hand, this notoriety has painted a massive target on McCall's back, prompting Borowski to unleash his full arsenal in an attempt to eliminate the lone vigilante. The section opens with McCall tracking the movements of one of Borowski's top lieutenants, Viktor Kozlov, a man known for his ruthlessness and cunning. Kozlov is the linchpin of Borovsky's operations, managing everything from money laundering to enforcing the syndicate's control over its territories. McCall understands that taking down Kozlov will not only cripple Borovsky's network but also send a powerful message to the remnants of the organization. In a tense sequence, McCall sets a trap for Kozlov, using his knowledge of the lieutenant's routines and vulnerabilities. This plan involves infiltrating a high-profile meeting where Kozlov and his associates are finalizing a weapons deal. The setting, a dimly lit warehouse on the outskirts of the city, is rife with tension. McCall methodically eliminates the guards stationed around the perimeter, moving like a shadow through the darkness. His approach is silent but deadly, a testament to his years of experience and unmatched tactical expertise. Once inside, McCall surveys the scene, carefully observing Kozlov and the others. His patience and attention to detail are on full display as he waits for the perfect moment to strike. The warehouse is filled with the sound of negotiations, the clinking of glasses, and the faint hum of machinery, creating an atmosphere thick with unease. McCall's internal monologue during this moment reveals his deep understanding of human behavior and his ability to predict his enemies' moves before they make them. When the time comes, McCall strikes with precision, dismantling the operation in a flurry of calculated moves. The scene is chaotic but controlled as McCall uses the environment to his advantage, turning the syndicate's own tools against them. In the end, Kozlov is left isolated, confronted by the very man he had been ordered to eliminate. The ensuing confrontation between McCall and Kozlov is intense and personal, as Kozlov attempts to bargain for his life, offering information in exchange for mercy. This moment serves as a turning point for McCall, highlighting the moral dilemmas he faces in his mission. While he is determined to see justice served, he is not immune to the emotional weight of his actions. Kozlov's pleas force McCall to confront the humanity of his enemies, as flawed and destructive as they may be. Despite this, McCall remains steadfast in his resolve, recognizing that Kozlov's downfall is a necessary step toward dismantling the syndicate and protecting the innocent. Meanwhile, Borovsky is reeling from the loss of yet another key ally. His frustration and desperation are palpable as he scrambles to regain control of the situation. This section delves deeper into Borovsky's psyche, revealing the cracks in his facade of power. For all his wealth and influence, Borovsky is ultimately a man driven by fear. Fear of losing his empire, fear of being exposed, and fear of McCall's relentless pursuit. This vulnerability adds depth to his character, transforming him from a one-dimensional villain into a complex antagonist. As McCall pieces together the information obtained from Kozlov, he uncovers a shocking revelation. Borovsky's syndicate is not operating in isolation. Instead, it is part of a larger network with connections to powerful figures in politics, law enforcement, and the corporate world. This discovery raises the stakes exponentially, as McCall realizes that his mission is far from over. Taking down Borovsky will not be enough. He must also confront the systemic corruption that allows such criminal enterprises to thrive. In this section, McCall also reflects on the personal cost of his mission. The loneliness and isolation he feels are palpable, as he recognizes that his crusade has left little room for personal connections. There is a poignant moment where McCall revisits the diner he frequents, seeking solace in the familiarity of its warm atmosphere. The staff, who have come to view McCall as a protector, offer him words of encouragement and gratitude, reminding him of the impact he has made on their lives. This brief respite is short-lived, however, as McCall is reminded of the dangers that come with his mission. A subtle but chilling encounter with one of Borovsky's operatives serves as a reminder that the syndicate's reach extends far and wide. McCall's heightened awareness and quick thinking allow him to escape the situation unscathed, but the encounter leaves him more determined than ever to bring the fight to Borovsky's doorstep. The section concludes with McCall preparing for the final phase of his mission. Armed with the intelligence gathered from Kozlov and other sources, he begins to formulate a plan to dismantle the syndicate once and for all. The sense of anticipation is palpable, as McCall's meticulous preparations and unwavering resolve set the stage for the climactic showdown. At the same time, the emotional undercurrents of the story, McCall's internal struggles, the sacrifices he has made, and the lives he has touched, add a layer of depth and humanity to the narrative. As Section 10 unfolds, Robert McCall's journey reaches its most intense and personal stage. His actions against Borowski's criminal empire have not only destabilized the organization, but also drawn the full attention of the mafia's leadership. The walls of protection that once surrounded him have crumbled, and McCall now finds himself facing an adversary who is just as determined as he is, if not more. This section delves into McCall's final confrontation with Borowski, where everything he has worked for comes to a head, and the stakes are higher than ever. McCall, ever the tactician, begins his plan to take down Borowski once and for all. But this time, his usual precision is tempered with an undeniable sense of urgency. His previous success in infiltrating and dismantling smaller parts of the syndicate has led him to this moment, the opportunity to strike at the heart of the organization. The deeper McCall delves into the mafia's infrastructure, the more he realizes that Borowski, despite his brutal tactics, is not just a criminal mastermind. He is also a product of a corrupt system that has allowed him to thrive. In the opening of the section, McCall carefully studies Borowski's movements, tracking him with a precision that shows how well he's learned to anticipate his enemy's actions. He takes advantage of every vulnerability, using technology and local connections to get closer to the mafia leader. McCall has no illusions about the risks. He knows that Borowski is now aware of the personal threat he faces. As McCall inches closer to his final goal, the mafia becomes increasingly unpredictable and ruthless. Every move is a calculated risk, as Borowski's forces begin to grow more aggressive in their attempts to find and eliminate McCall. But McCall is not the type to run from a fight. In fact, his resolve is stronger than ever. The deeper he becomes involved in this battle, the more he understands the systemic issues that perpetuate the cycle of violence. His fight is no longer just a personal vendetta against the men who have wronged him, but rather a fight for something greater, the dismantling of a corrupt empire that has victimized countless people. The narrative delves into McCall's emotional journey in this section, focusing on the toll his crusade has taken on him. He has lost more than he ever anticipated: friends, connections, and a sense of peace that once defined his life. Yet, despite all of this, McCall's determination remains unshaken. This paradox of a man who has given up so much to achieve justice is central to the section, showing the sacrifice inherent in his mission. He finds solace only in the quiet moments of his work, where every decision and every move is motivated by an unwavering sense of duty. As McCall prepares for the final confrontation, his plan comes to life with precision and urgency. He gathers all the information he has collected over the past few months, piecing together Borowski's most vulnerable locations, hidden warehouses, safe houses, and secret meeting spots. McCall knows that Borowski's final stronghold will be a challenge, but it's a challenge he's prepared for. The scale of the operation he's about to launch is unlike anything he's done before. It's no longer about subtle sabotage or stealthy takedowns. It's about taking down an entire organization in one fell swoop. The final battle between McCall and Borowski unfolds in a high-stakes sequence of action and strategy. The setting is a sprawling, isolated estate on the outskirts of the city, where Borowski is holed up with his last line of defense. The estate is heavily guarded, with layers of security designed to prevent any unwelcome visitors from entering. McCall, however, is no stranger to dangerous environments. He infiltrates the estate with a careful balance of stealth and aggression, using his vast knowledge of tactics to neutralize guards without alerting the others. The physical tension in this sequence is palpable as McCall works his way through the estate. The estate itself, a dark and foreboding mansion, serves as an excellent backdrop for the final confrontation. The atmosphere is thick with suspense, as every corner and hallway could be hiding a potential threat. McCall's movements are fluid and precise, a testament to his years of experience in high-risk operations. Each moment is calculated, And yet there is an undeniable urgency in his actions, as though time is running out. The confrontation with Borowski finally comes, and it is not just a battle of strength or skill. It is a battle of ideals. Borowski, surrounded by his remaining loyal men, tries to fight back with everything he has left, throwing all his resources into stopping McCall. He underestimates McCall's resolve and ruthlessness, believing that he can break the man who has caused him so much damage. However, Borowski's desperation works against him, clouding his judgment and allowing McCall to exploit his weaknesses. In the final moments of their face-off, McCall delivers a chilling monologue to Borowski, exposing the truth behind his empire's corruption and the countless lives it has destroyed. This speech not only serves as a personal reckoning for Borowski, but also highlights the larger systemic issues that McCall has been fighting against all along. McCall's words echo the themes of justice and moral responsibility that have defined his journey, leaving Borowski with no room to escape the consequences of his actions. After the confrontation, McCall is left standing amidst the wreckage of Borowski's empire, physically exhausted but mentally resolute. The chaos of the battle has left its marks on him, scratches, bruises, and the weight of the lives he has taken to ensure the syndicate's downfall. But it's the emotional toll that weighs most heavily on him. McCall knows that while he has dismantled the mafia and destroyed Borowski's power, the consequences of his actions will ripple through the city for years to come. The people he has saved and those he has lost will carry the scars of this conflict for the rest of their lives. The section ends with McCall walking away from the smoldering remnants of the estate, his silhouette fading into the darkness. There is no fanfare, no cheers of victory. Instead, there's a quiet sense of resolution, as McCall has completed his mission, but knows that the fight for justice is never truly over. The final shot lingers on him as he disappears into the night, a figure forever changed by the battle he's fought, but still holding on to the ideals that pushed him to take action in the first place. Section 11 of Robert McCall's journey marks a profound shift in both his mission and his personal resolve. Having dismantled Borowski's criminal empire and confronted the shadowy figures pulling the strings, McCall now faces a far more difficult and emotional challenge, reconciling the consequences of his actions with the values that drove him. The battle against the mafia may have been won, but as McCall stands amidst the wreckage, he realizes that his quest for justice has created a legacy that is not easily understood or resolved. This section explores the lingering aftermath of McCall's crusade, particularly the human cost of his actions and the moral complexities that define him. After the fall of Borowski and the collapse of his empire, McCall returns to the quieter life he once sought, working at the hardware store and trying to maintain a sense of normalcy. But the peace he had hoped for feels elusive, as the people he has helped and the destruction he has caused weigh heavily on him. The community he has fought to protect has found some semblance of peace, but McCall knows that their safety is fragile. His own role in securing their futures has not been without significant personal sacrifice, and the emotional toll of his choices lingers unresolved. One of the most poignant aspects of this section is McCall's relationship with Terry, the young woman he saved at the beginning of the story. Terry, now free from the grip of the mafia, begins to rebuild her life and pursue her dreams of becoming a singer. While McCall has provided her with the opportunity to escape, he is haunted by the reality that his actions, while well-intentioned, may have permanently altered her life. In their occasional meetings, McCall is careful not to overstep his boundaries, understanding that his presence in her life may carry both relief and danger. He wants to offer her the chance for a fresh start, but he knows that the darkness of his past looms large, threatening to pull her back into the chaos he has left behind. As McCall observes Terry from a distance, he realizes that she has begun to flourish, finding her voice in a world that once seemed bleak and oppressive. But this growth comes with its own set of challenges, and McCall cannot escape the feeling that his shadow will always be present in her life. Their interactions become bittersweet, filled with unspoken emotions. Terry, now more confident and independent, expresses her gratitude, but also her desire to live life on her own terms, free from the weight of Robert's intervention. This dynamic forces McCall to confront the limits of his influence and the realization that he cannot control the lives of those he seeks to protect. The complexity of McCall's journey is revealed further when he learns that some of the Mafia's surviving members have gone into hiding and are planning to regroup. Despite the apparent victory, McCall understands that the defeat of Borowski is only a temporary solution. The systems that allowed the Mafia to thrive still exist, and there are always more predators waiting to fill the void left behind. McCall grapples with a sense of futility as he contemplates whether his efforts have truly made a lasting difference, or if they are merely part of an endless cycle of violence. The weight of this realization hits hardest when McCall's quiet life is disrupted by a new threat. A former associate of Borowski, seeking revenge for the collapse of the syndicate, begins targeting the businesses McCall has helped protect. The new enemy is far more methodical and dangerous, someone who has learned from the mistakes of his predecessors, and is now working with a quiet vengeance to reclaim the power that McCall took from them. The appearance of this new adversary forces McCall back into action as he realizes that his past decisions will continue to have consequences, both for himself and those around him. McCall's internal conflict intensifies as he once again takes up the mantle of the protector. He knows that his past actions have brought this new wave of danger to the doorstep of the people he cares about. The guilt that has been simmering beneath the surface boils over, threatening to drown him. In one of the most reflective moments of the section, McCall visits a quiet graveyard where he once stood with his late wife, remembering the life he had before all of this began. The conversation with his wife's gravestone is filled with unresolved sorrow and longing, as McCall questions whether his sense of duty was worth the pain it has caused him and the people he has tried to protect. This emotional scene underscores the overarching theme of the narrative: the conflict between personal sacrifice and the pursuit of a greater good. McCall has already given up so much: his past, his peace, his relationships, yet the relentless drive for justice continues to pull him forward. This section is not just about fighting external enemies. It's about confronting the internal battles that come with every act of violence and every decision made. Despite the emotional weight that McCall carries, he does not falter in his mission. This section sees him once again using his extensive skills to dismantle the new threat, but his approach is more measured this time. He works smarter, not harder, employing psychological tactics that force his enemies into positions where they cannot escape. The operations are less about brute force and more about subterfuge, manipulation, and strategy. This shift in tactics highlights McCall's growth, both as a warrior and as a man who has learned from his past. In a tense final sequence, McCall confronts the mastermind behind the resurgence of the Mafia's influence, a man named Ivanov, who has been secretly organizing the remnants of Borowski's empire. Their confrontation is an intricate dance of words and actions, as McCall outsmarts Ivanov, turning his own methods against him. The final battle is physical, but the real victory comes when McCall finally corners Ivanov and exposes his betrayal. The defeat of Ivanov represents the closure McCall desperately needed, but it also marks a new beginning, one where McCall understands that justice, while necessary, is not always a final victory. As the section concludes, McCall finds himself once again walking away from the wreckage. But this time, there is no sense of relief, only a quiet acceptance. The mission is complete, and the people he has fought for are safe, but McCall is forever changed. He understands now that there will always be another battle, another fight for justice. Yet in his heart, McCall knows that the fight is worth it, because while the world may never be perfect, his pursuit of justice brings a sense of purpose that transcends his own personal cost. Section 12 marks a critical juncture in Robert McCall's journey, where the full scope of his mission is revealed, and the consequences of his choices come into sharper focus. As McCall navigates the final stages of his battle against the remnants of the Russian Mafia, he finds himself confronted not only by the physical threat of his enemies but also by the internal conflict of reconciling the man he was with the person he has become. This section emphasizes McCall's evolution, not only as a protector, but as a man forced to confront the personal cost of his unwavering commitment to justice. The section opens with McCall reflecting on the people he has helped throughout his journey. His actions, though motivated by a desire to right the wrongs of the world, have come with unintended consequences, collateral damage that haunts him in quiet moments. As McCall walks through the streets of the city, he notices the faces of those he has saved and the ones who have been left behind in the wake of his mission. His mind constantly drifts to the lives he has affected, for better or worse. While he has saved people like Terry, his actions have led to the destruction of a criminal empire, and he questions whether this destruction truly brought peace, or if it simply created a new set of problems. The weight of his choices feels heavier than ever as the city's underbelly begins to stir once again. The Russian mafia, though fragmented, is not easily defeated. The final remnants of the organization, those who have evaded capture and elimination, begin to regroup under a new, more dangerous leader. Ivanov, a cold and calculating strategist, has taken control of the faction's remaining operations. Unlike Borovsky, who relied on brute force and intimidation, Ivanov is a master of psychological manipulation and deceit. He understands McCall's methods and has adapted accordingly, making it clear that the final confrontation will not be a straightforward battle. Ivanov is smart, and McCall must outthink him in order to succeed. As McCall begins his investigation into Ivanov's operations, he discovers that Ivanov has been consolidating power within the remnants of the mafia by manipulating the fractured pieces of Borovsky's empire. He has formed alliances with corrupt officials, influential business figures, and rogue military contractors who provide him with resources, manpower, and a network of connections. This new threat is more insidious and systemic, operating not just in the shadows of the city, but also in its very foundations. McCall realizes that Ivanov is more than just a criminal mastermind. He's a symptom of the larger system of corruption that McCall has been fighting against since the beginning. McCall's strategy shifts in response to this realization. Rather than going after Ivanov with brute force, he begins to infiltrate the systems that allow the mafia to function undisturbed. He starts by targeting the corrupt business interests that support Ivanov's operations, using his connections and intelligence-gathering skills to expose their illegal dealings. Each operation McCall executes is a carefully calculated strike, designed not only to disrupt Ivanov's supply chain, but to draw attention to the larger network of corruption that has been feeding the mafia for years. The tension builds as McCall continues his war against Ivanov's empire, but it becomes increasingly clear that the fight is no longer just about eliminating the mafia. It's about addressing the system that has enabled it to thrive. In one key scene, McCall confronts a high-ranking government official who has been secretly funneling money and resources to Ivanov. The official, smug and self-assured, believes that his power and influence will shield him from the consequences of his actions. McCall, however, exposes the man's deep ties to the criminal underworld, dismantling the facade of legitimacy with cold, irrefutable evidence. This confrontation serves as a powerful reminder of the pervasive nature of the system McCall is up against, and the moral ambiguity that comes with challenging it. Meanwhile, McCall's relationship with Terry takes another turn as she continues to rebuild her life. Her journey of self-discovery, fueled by the freedom McCall has given her, is a powerful counterpoint to McCall's internal struggle. She now performs at local venues, finding a voice that was once suppressed under the weight of her past. Their interactions are more distant now, tinged with both gratitude and sadness, as McCall's increasingly dangerous mission pushes him further from the people he's trying to protect. Yet despite the emotional distance, there is an unspoken understanding between them, a bond forged through shared pain and the hope of a better future. In one quiet but poignant moment, McCall watches Terry from the shadows as she performs on stage, her voice ringing out through the club. He feels a mixture of pride and regret, understanding that he cannot undo the past, but that her newfound freedom is the most meaningful outcome of his actions. This moment crystallizes McCall's ongoing internal conflict. He has saved those he can, but the cost of his crusade has left him isolated and emotionally detached. He knows that he cannot turn back, but he also recognizes that, in seeking justice for others, he has lost a piece of himself. As the section progresses, McCall makes his final approach to Ivanov's hideout. Ivanov has gone underground, relying on a network of loyalists and safe houses to shield himself from McCall's pursuit. However, McCall's meticulous planning and knowledge of the city's underworld allow him to track Ivanov's movements with pinpoint accuracy. In the climactic moments of this section, McCall confronts Ivanov face to face in a tense showdown that is as much about ideology as it is about survival. Ivanov taunts McCall, trying to play on his guilt and doubts, but McCall remains resolute. The fight is not just about defeating a criminal. It is about breaking the chains of a corrupt system that has imprisoned countless lives, including his own. The sequence culminates in a high-stakes battle where McCall must outthink and outmaneuver Ivanov's elite security team. The fight is physical and strategic, with McCall using every tool at his disposal to neutralize the threat. The environment plays a significant role, as McCall turns the surroundings, an abandoned factory, into a deadly weapon. The climax of this battle is not only a testament to McCall's skill and resourcefulness, but also a moment of emotional catharsis, as he comes to terms with the weight of his choices and the necessity of his actions. As Section 12 concludes, McCall stands victorious, but the price of his success is evident. His journey has been one of profound sacrifice, and as the dust settles, McCall is left to confront the emotional and moral toll of his quest for justice. The Mafia may be defeated, but McCall's internal battle is far from over. The section ends with McCall walking away from the wreckage, the future uncertain but filled with the knowledge that his fight, while necessary, will never truly be over. Section 13 marks the culmination of Robert McCall's efforts to dismantle the Russian Mafia and its vast network, but it also brings McCall to a crossroads. Having faced both physical and emotional trials, McCall now finds himself in the final stages of his battle against the remnants of Ivanov's syndicate. The deeper truth behind his mission is laid bare as McCall must confront not only the criminals he's been hunting, but also the very systems of corruption that allowed such entities to flourish in the first place. This section becomes as much about McCall's personal reckoning as it is about the last fight to secure justice for the oppressed. The section opens with McCall receiving intelligence that Ivanov, the man responsible for reuniting the broken remnants of the syndicate, has retreated to an old fortified mansion in a remote part of the city. This place was once used as a safe house for high-level mafia members and serves as Ivanov's last refuge. McCall, armed with the extensive knowledge of Ivanov's operations, prepares for what he knows will be the most dangerous confrontation of his life. As he gears up for the final assault, he reflects on everything he's sacrificed to get to this point. The personal relationships lost, the trust broken, and the emotional toll the mission has taken. The tension in this section is amplified by McCall's sense of isolation. Though his body is ready for the mission, his mind is burdened with the weight of the people he's helped and those he's failed. As he navigates the final stretch of his path, McCall is haunted by the faces of those who had been caught in the syndicate's web of corruption. In a brief reflective moment, he visits the families of victims he couldn't save, offering a quiet apology and paying tribute to their suffering. The symbolism in this moment is significant, as McCall realizes that his fight against the syndicate will not provide closure for every person he's encountered. There will always be losses. This deep reflection leads to a moment of vulnerability as McCall reconsiders the emotional toll his crusade has taken on him. He hasn't been the same man since his wife's death, and his role as a protector of the innocent has consumed him. McCall contemplates whether there is any room for personal peace, or if his identity is forever bound to the conflict he's created. This emotional introspection highlights the complexity of his character. Though he's a vigilante, his motivations have always been tied to a deep, almost obsessive desire for justice, stemming from a sense of responsibility rather than self-interest. As McCall prepares for the final confrontation, the scene shifts to Ivanov's mansion. The structure is imposing, isolated in an area riddled with high-tech security, cameras, and a small army of Ivanov's loyalists. However, McCall, with his unparalleled experience and understanding of his enemy, is undeterred. He devises a plan not only to infiltrate the mansion, but to expose Ivanov's corrupt dealings to the world, ensuring that his influence is eradicated for good. McCall isn't just fighting for personal revenge, but for the exposure of an entire network of corruption that spans across multiple layers of power, from law enforcement to corporate backers. Infiltrating the mansion is a meticulous process. McCall uses his intimate knowledge of the city's infrastructure to disable the security system silently, blending into the shadows as he takes out guards one by one. Each encounter is swift and efficient, reflecting McCall's evolution as both a fighter and strategist. He doesn't just defeat his enemies, he uses their own systems against them, exploiting weaknesses with a cold precision. Every step is part of a larger plan to corner Ivanov and expose his empire. As McCall advances deeper into the mansion, he uncovers more of Ivanov's operations than he anticipated. Hidden files reveal that the syndicate was not only involved in drug trafficking and human trafficking, but had also orchestrated a series of corporate takeovers, bribing officials to protect their business interests. The sheer scope of Ivanov's corruption leaves McCall shocked and disgusted. He realizes that Ivanov's hold on the city is far more entrenched than he initially thought. But this discovery only strengthens McCall's resolve to see the mission through to the end, no matter the cost. The final showdown between McCall and Ivanov takes place in the mansion's expansive, dimly lit study. Ivanov, aware of McCall's presence in his domain, welcomes the confrontation, his calm demeanor betraying none of the panic or fear that might be expected. Ivanov is a man of intellect as much as violence, and he uses his words as weapons just as much as his guards. The psychological aspect of their battle is as crucial as the physical one. Ivanov attempts to sway McCall, claiming that his actions were merely the result of the corrupt world they live in. He tries to manipulate McCall into questioning his own ideals, suggesting that, in the end, they are both products of a flawed system, both driven by a desire for power, albeit in different forms. For a brief moment, McCall hesitates, taken aback by Ivanov's words. It's a subtle moment of doubt as Ivanov's manipulation cuts through the veneer of McCall's mission. But McCall, always driven by a moral compass, quickly recenters himself. He refutes Ivanov's claims, explaining that while both of them may operate in the shadows, the difference lies in their motives. McCall's actions have always been driven by a need to protect the innocent, while Ivanov's have been motivated by greed and control. This distinction is what separates McCall from his enemies, and it provides him with the clarity he needs to finish what he started. The final battle is brutal. Ivanov, using the knowledge of his home and its various hidden passages, attempts to escape and continue the fight. But McCall, ever resourceful, corners him and delivers a climactic fight that leaves Ivanov defeated. McCall doesn't kill him immediately, however. Instead, he forces Ivanov to face the consequences of his actions. As Ivanov's empire crumbles around him, McCall takes one final step. He ensures that the evidence of Ivanov's corruption reaches the public, leaving his legacy of crime exposed for the world to see. After Ivanov's capture and the disintegration of his syndicate, McCall stands over the wreckage of the mansion, the victory hollow in the face of the emotional toll. He knows that while the mission is over, his journey is not. The fight for justice, for those who are oppressed, will continue, but McCall understands now more than ever that his role in the world will always be complicated. As he walks away from the mansion, the weight of his actions and the realization that peace is always fleeting rests heavily on his shoulders. Section 14 is a moment of resolution and reflection for Robert McCall. After the defeat of Ivanov and the collapse of the criminal empire, McCall stands at a crossroads. His battle against corruption and criminality may have reached a temporary conclusion, but the war he has waged, both external and internal, is far from over. In this section, McCall grapples with the aftermath of his actions, not just in terms of the people he's fought for, but also with the personal cost of his crusade. The narrative moves beyond the physical victories and explores the emotional toll on McCall, making this section one of the most introspective moments of the entire story. The opening of the section paints a picture of McCall standing alone in the quiet aftermath of his battle. The city around him feels oddly still, as if it too is waiting for some kind of closure. The buildings, once filled with the ominous signs of mafia activity, now appear more mundane, the weight of their previous secrets gone, yet leaving McCall with a sense of quiet desolation. Though the immediate danger has passed, McCall is acutely aware that the destruction of one criminal empire doesn't erase the systemic corruption that still exists in the world. In this moment, he acknowledges that his fight for justice is ongoing. McCall's physical exhaustion is evident. His face is drawn, his movements more deliberate, as if each action takes a fraction more effort. He has sacrificed his peace, his relationships, and his past in the pursuit of something greater, and now, in the silence after the storm, he begins to question what all of this has truly cost him. The weight of his decisions, sacrificing time with people he cared about, committing acts of violence in the name of justice, begins to feel heavier than ever. It is a moment of reckoning, and McCall realizes that, while he has given the city a chance for peace, he is unsure of what lies ahead for him personally. As McCall walks through the city, he passes by familiar faces, people he has helped, saved, or inspired in some way. Each one reminds him of the impact of his actions, both positive and negative. The boy whose father he helped escape from a violent gang, the business owners whose livelihoods he protected, and even the families who have lost loved ones to the mafia's reach, all of them have been touched by his crusade. Yet, with each encounter, McCall feels a sense of detachment. These people, while grateful, don't know the full story. They don't know the man behind the actions, the sacrifices he's made, and the emotional toll it has taken on him. He has become a symbol, a protector to many, but not a person who can fully connect with the lives around him. It is in these moments that McCall feels the bitter isolation of his existence. He has become the lone wolf, driven by an unwavering need for justice, but cut off from the emotional connections that once defined him. He reflects on the early days of his career, before everything became about vengeance and protection, when he had a family, a purpose that wasn't tied to violence. These memories resurface, reminding him of the love he once had, but also of the fact that those days are gone. The people he loved are no longer part of his life, and the connections he has built through his mission, though meaningful, are fragile. This realization is difficult for McCall to bear. The world he has created, a world in which he is both protector and outcast, has left him emotionally barren. McCall's relationship with Terry takes center stage in this section. As she continues to rebuild her life and pursue her dreams of music, McCall watches from afar, proud of her progress, but deeply conflicted about his place in her life. They have shared moments of tenderness and mutual respect, but McCall knows that his past looms over everything. Terry has moved on in ways McCall can't. She is no longer the frightened young woman trapped by the mafia, but a free, independent person. He realizes that he cannot continue to protect her from the consequences of his own actions. She has her own life to live, and his involvement in it, though rooted in care, has become a complication. The tension in their relationship is palpable, as McCall must come to terms with the fact that she no longer needs him in the way she once did. Terry, for her part, has become increasingly aware of McCall's internal struggle. She recognizes that the man she once relied on is now a ghost of his former self, a man who has given everything to a cause, yet lost his humanity in the process. In their few interactions, she tries to reach out, but McCall's walls are too high. There's an undeniable sadness in these moments, a sense of love and gratitude, but also the understanding that they can never truly be what they once were. Terry, now confident in her new life, realizes that the man she once looked to for salvation is now the one in need of saving, but from himself. As McCall continues his personal journey of self-reflection, the narrative shifts back to the broader consequences of his actions. The city, still recovering from the fall of the mafia, begins to experience a fragile sense of peace. Crime rates drop, businesses that once operated under the mafia's thumb begin to thrive, and the corrupt officials who had aided the syndicate are slowly being exposed and removed from power. However, McCall understands that these victories are temporary. The systems of power that allowed the mafia to flourish are still in place, and there will always be someone else waiting to fill the void. This realization sparks a deeper conversation within McCall about the nature of his work. Is he really making a difference, or is he simply prolonging a cycle that will repeat itself? Has he become a part of the very system he sought to destroy? In these quiet moments of reflection, McCall contemplates whether there is a way for him to break free from his role as a vigilante and live a life that isn't defined by violence and solitude. The question of whether redemption is even possible for him hangs heavy in the air. The section ends with McCall returning to the diner, a place that has symbolized his connection to the people he's fought for. He sits alone, ordering his usual tea, and for the first time in a long time, he simply exists in the moment. There are no more battles to fight, no more criminals to chase, just the hum of the diner and the soft clink of his cup. He knows the world will continue to turn, the cycle will go on, and his role in it may never truly change. But for now, in this fleeting moment of peace, McCall has found a semblance of acceptance. He may never be able to reconcile the man he was with the man he has become, but he will continue to fight for what he believes in, even if it means walking alone. Section 15 marks the closing chapter of Robert McCall's saga, bringing together the threads of his journey with a quiet but powerful sense of resolution. While McCall has defeated his enemies and dismantled the criminal empire that once held the city in its grip, this section is more about his return to a life of solitude and contemplation. The external battle may be over, but the internal one continues as McCall reflects on what he has sacrificed, what he has achieved, and the uncertain road that lies ahead. The section opens with McCall standing on the rooftop of an old familiar building, the very place where his crusade against the criminal underworld began. The city sprawls beneath him, the lights of buildings twinkling like stars in the distance. The once oppressive shadows of the mafia seem to have faded, but McCall knows that the battle for justice never truly ends. He looks out over the city, feeling both the weight of his actions and a fleeting sense of accomplishment. The city is quieter now, but it isn't peaceful. It's just a temporary calm, the silence before the next storm. McCall, knowing that crime and corruption will always exist in some form, recognizes the transience of his victory. McCall's reflection is interrupted by a simple phone call. It's from Susan Plummer, a woman he met during his time confronting the syndicate's corruption. Susan has become a trusted ally in exposing the mafia's ties to political and business figures. Over the course of their interaction, McCall has learned to respect her intelligence and determination. In their brief conversations, there's an undeniable connection, yet McCall has always kept his distance, unwilling to entangle himself emotionally in a life that might only lead to more pain. But now, Susan has reached out to him with a simple request: "Are you coming back?" Her question hangs in the air, and McCall feels an ache deep in his chest. It's not just a question about the mission, it's about him. It's about whether he can move past the violence, past the role he's been playing, and rejoin the world he once belonged to. For so long, McCall has been driven by the need for justice, but that need has isolated him, pulling him farther from the life he once shared with his wife, and further from any hope of normalcy. McCall hesitates before responding, knowing that the answer isn't as simple as he once thought. His voice is steady when he says, "I'm not sure," and hangs up. After that conversation, McCall is left to confront the reality of his situation. He has been living in the margins for so long, operating outside the law, outside the rules of a society he has grown disillusioned with. Yet, as he stands there, the city's lights below him, McCall is forced to consider whether it's possible to return to a normal life. His mind drifts back to the day he first left that life behind, the tragic moment when he lost everything that mattered to him. His wife's death, the slow collapse of his former self, the quiet promise to never again be that man, all of it lingers like a shadow in his heart. McCall takes a slow, deliberate walk through the streets of the city, a place he's saved yet never truly belonged to. The city is filled with people living their lives, oblivious to the sacrifices McCall has made for their safety. There are moments of fleeting connection, an elderly man he helps across the street, a child who waves as he passes by, but these brief encounters are not enough to fill the void he feels. There is still something missing. As McCall continues walking, he eventually finds himself at the diner where he used to meet Terry. The same booth, the same old waitress, the same worn menus. It's as if nothing has changed, but McCall knows better. The world around him may seem unchanged, but he himself is different. He's no longer the man who could go about his days, unaware of the suffering in the world. His fight for justice has transformed him in ways he cannot undo. Yet he realizes that his journey has not been in vain. The people he's helped, Terry, the families, the innocents who have found some measure of peace because of him, have made it worthwhile. As McCall sits down, he orders a simple cup of tea, his customary choice. His hand brushes against the table, feeling the wear of years of patrons before him. There's a sense of nostalgia here. A quiet acknowledgement of all the small moments that make life meaningful. The waitress comes by, a familiar face, and when she places his cup of tea in front of him, she smiles. McCall notices something in her eyes, a recognition of who he is, but also a sense of distance. She doesn't know the full story of his past, nor does she need to. But in that brief interaction, McCall understands that while he can never return to the man he was, there is still room for him in the world he's fought to protect. Later, McCall meets Susan again. This time there is no urgency, no need for a quick mission. Instead, they sit across from one another in a quiet cafe, and Susan, perceptive as ever, speaks of her ongoing work. She's continuing to expose the corruption within the city, but McCall can see that the fire in her eyes is different now. She's still fighting the good fight, but there's a calmness in her that McCall doesn't have. As they talk, there's no mention of McCall's past work or of the dangers he's faced. Instead, their conversation shifts to the simple joys of everyday life, things that McCall had once taken for granted. He listens intently, realizing that for the first time in a long while, he doesn't feel the overwhelming need to leave or to fight. It's as if, in this moment of quiet connection, McCall begins to understand that peace is something worth fighting for. His battle may have been about justice, but what he's truly seeking now is redemption, not from the world, but from himself. Susan's presence in this moment symbolizes the possibility of a future that is no longer dictated by violence and isolation. In the final scenes, McCall walks out of the cafe, and for the first time in a long time, he takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past lift just slightly. There are no grand gestures, no dramatic actions. It's simply McCall acknowledging that, for better or worse, the journey has shaped him into the man he is today. The story concludes with McCall walking into the city, still carrying the burden of his past, but now with a renewed sense of purpose. As the lights flicker around him, McCall realizes that while the fight may never truly be over, there is room for hope in the quiet moments, in the ordinary connections that make life meaningful. The final shot is of McCall, disappearing into the night, not as a hero, but as a man who has learned to live with the choices he has made, and to find peace in the struggle for justice. This expanded section emphasizes McCall's introspective journey toward acceptance and peace. His reflection on his past, the interactions with Terry and Susan, and his quiet moment of closure all work together to bring emotional depth and resolution to the story, while still leaving room for the complexities of his character to remain intact. The Equalizer, directed by Antoine Fuqua and starring Denzel Washington, is a gripping action thriller that explores themes of justice, vengeance, and redemption. Based on the 1980s TV series of the same name, the film reimagines the iconic character of Robert McCall, a former Black Ops operative who seeks solace from his violent past by living a quiet life in Boston. But when he meets Terry, Chloë Grace Moretz, a young woman trapped in the grip of the Russian mafia, McCall is forced to come out of retirement and put his lethal skills to use again, this time to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. Denzel Washington's performance as McCall is a masterclass in restraint and intensity. He portrays McCall as a calm, almost stoic figure with a strong moral compass. He is a man of few words, but his actions speak volumes, and Washington's quiet but powerful presence makes McCall a character you can't help but root for. The film skillfully blends action with emotional depth, and the character-driven narrative adds layers to the story, making McCall's quest for justice feel personal and meaningful. One of the standout elements of The Equalizer is its pacing. The film builds tension slowly, with McCall taking his time to assess the situations he gets involved in. When action scenes do arrive, they are brutal and efficient, reflecting McCall's training and experience. The fight sequences are meticulously choreographed, showing McCall as a man who has learned how to deal with violence in the most effective way. It's not just about brute strength. McCall uses his intellect, observation, and calm demeanor to dismantle his enemies in ways that feel earned and satisfying. The antagonist, a Russian mafia syndicate, provides a fitting foil to McCall's sense of justice. Their ruthlessness is in stark contrast to McCall's moral code, and his ability to outthink and outfight them creates a thrilling dynamic. The villains are not simply evil for the sake of it. They represent the larger forces of crime and corruption that McCall fights against, making his actions even more resonant. While the film is filled with tense moments and fast-paced action, it also does an excellent job of exploring McCall's internal struggle. The quiet moments with McCall reflect a man who is seeking redemption for past mistakes. His relationship with Terry, though brief, shows his underlying compassion and desire to protect those who cannot protect themselves. McCall is not just a man seeking justice for others, but someone who is trying to make peace with his own troubled history. The cinematography also deserves a mention, with Fuqua's use of shadows and lighting adding to the gritty, dark atmosphere of the film. The cityscape of Boston is both bleak and vibrant, reflecting McCall's internal journey as he battles against both external and internal demons. The soundtrack, composed by Harry Gregson Williams, complements the tone of the film perfectly, using minimalism and suspenseful tracks to heighten the tension. Overall, The Equalizer is a solid, engaging action movie that stands out due to Denzel Washington's commanding performance and the film's strong sense of morality and justice. It's not just a typical revenge thriller. It's a movie that explores the complexity of a man trying to atone for his past, while seeking justice in a world filled with corruption and brutality. Whether you're a fan of intense action or well-crafted character studies, The Equalizer offers something for everyone. Thank you for watching our review of The Equalizer. What do you think of Robert McCall's journey of justice and redemption? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie reviews and breakdowns. If you enjoyed the film or have any favorite scenes, we'd love to hear your perspective. For more content like this, make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, stay vigilant and always stand up for what's right.